Okay, just coming into the gallery, the early years. We have a collection of early aircraft engines on our left. I will narrate what they are as we go past them. This is a Samson ZZ9 engine. Next is the ABC Wasp engine. The Bentley BR2. British air-cooled 9-cylinder rotary. The Renault 12 FE Foxtrot Echo was a V12 engine. A Lorraine Dietrich 8BE 8 Bravo Echo, French built. The Curtiss K12 was one of the most advanced engines in 1917. Next is the Benz BZ4, Bravo Zulu 4. About 6,500 of these engines were made, 6-cylinder. This powered the Albatross and other various German World War I aircraft. Next is the Anzani 10. This is a joint effort by French and British. Air-cooled radial engine, not a rotary but a radial. And finally is the RAF-1A engine, Royal Aircraft Factory. 90 horsepower, 440 pounds. What's the difference between a radial and a rotary engine? A radial engine, the cylinders are fixed and the crankshaft rotates within the crankcase. A rotary engine, the crankshaft is fixed, the propeller bolts to the crankcase, and the whole crankcase rotates around the crankshaft. This is the Fiat A12 engine. We see here a 1901 Wright Brothers wind tunnel. A little bit of information on the Wright Brothers. 1902. In 1903. Of course, the first powered flight was successfully made on December 17th, 1903. At Kitty Hawk, North Carolina, Kill Devil Hills. And then they returned to Dayton at the Huffman Prairie to continue their flight experiments. One reason they were successful in Kitty Hawk was that the altitude was so low at sea level. Had they been at the altitude here at the in Ohio, they would have never flown. Above us is a Wright 1911 Model D. This was made by Curtiss Aircraft Factory, Glenn Curtiss, who was the main competitor to the Wright brothers. Over here is a 1909 Wright military flyer similar to the type that Lieutenant Selfridge was killed in. He was the first fatality of an aircraft crash. Come around and we'll talk a little bit more about lighter than air flight. Of course, balloons were used as early as the Civil War by both Confederates and the Union. And we got into controllable balloons, dirigibles versus blimps. Dirigibles are a rigid airship, which means that they have a skeleton inside the outer envelope that holds its shape, and then the gas bags are held in cells inside. Where a blimp is a soft airship, and the pressure of the gas is what gives the airship its shape. This is a Curtis 4-cylinder water-cooled engine used in the 1908 Signal Corps dirigible. About 25 horsepower. Pretty little thing, isn't it? Of course, Glenn Curtis was, as I said, the primary competition to the Wright brothers for powered flight. You see here a scale model of the 1852 steam-powered dirigible. And then below it is the Zeppelin LZ-1, which flew in 1901. This was the world's first rigid dirigible. They were used by the Germans with great success in World War I in their blitz over London, dropping incendiary bombs. This is a very nice diorama of the 1909 military flyer. I'll turn here and we will see an actual Wright brothers bicycle. This is a bicycle actually built in the Wright Cycle Shop, which is now in Dearborn Village in Michigan. We'll continue around here, just do a little cruising tour. Around 1907. (1909) Wright Flyer. First shot fired from an airplane. See various trophies. We come around, we'll see some various other memorabilia. A shattered propeller. And the roller chain drive for the propeller shafts. Up above is a Curtis JN1. J1, that was known as the Jenny. A beautifully handmade wind tunnel. Some various Wright aircraft engines. 6-cylinder, 60. A Roberts. A Kirkham. Look at the beautiful marquetry on this wind tunnel. And it was driven by a wide flat belt, as you can see here at the end. Again, directly above the standard J1. A Sturdivant 5A engine. Here on the left is a SPAD 7, flown by the Allies in World War I. By the time World War I ended, they were at the SPAD 13. Another Curtis engine. The OX5 here. This is an Avro Aircraft Company, one of the great British aircraft companies. What we have here is a Roan rotary engine. Again, as I mentioned earlier, the rotary, the actual crankcase rotates. If if you look closely, you can see where the prop bolts to the crankcase, the crankshaft stays fixed and the entire engine rotates around it. There really was no throttle on it. The way that you controlled the speed was through what was called a blip switch. You would cut the ignition and it would cause the engine not to fire for just a split second, as long as you held that blip switch down.
In preparation for combat duty at the front. Finally, graduation day arrived.
Another rotary. This one powered the DR-1 Fokker triplane, made famous by Manfred von Richthofen, also known as the Red Baron. On the right is a Newport 28. And those fans of Snoopy and the Peanuts gang, the famous Sopwith Camel is made famous by Snoopy and his doghouse. Sopwith made the Sopwith Trike, the Sopwith Triplane, the Sopwith Pup, but the Camel was by far the most famous and well known, thanks in large part to Charles Schulz and Snoopy. Another beautiful large wind tunnel. This one was used at McCook Field for evaluating wing design and aircraft design. A Halberstadt CL4. Come around and see if we can show the machine gun mount. As you can see, the engine here, the fuel tank was up above, and there was the rear cockpit had a ring mount that allowed the machine gunner to swivel 360-degree fuel to fire. This is the Model A Hispania Suiza engine. This is a Swiss-built engine. Up above we have a World War I barrage balloon. We'll come back around and get a better image of that. This is a SPAD 13 that was the evolution of the end of World War I. The observer's basket for the barrage balloon, these were filled with hydrogen, and these brave observers would be connected by a wire to the ground. They would actually, if they got hit, they'd bail out with a parachute. Not a place I'd want to be. Up above is the Fokker Albatross, painted using what was called a lozenge camouflage. And the pink was actually a common color used in World War I camouflage by the Germans. This is the Bug, one of the first aerial torpedoes. A cutaway of the J-1 Jenny, showing the construction. Wood framework covered with linen or muslin and coated with dope, which was a sealant that actually tightened the skin. Ahead of us is the Caproni Italian bomber. Great big brute for its day. Had a nose gunner. Carried a three-man crew, I believe, 2 or 3-man crew. You can see on the rear of the struts the actual radiators that were used for cooling the engine. It was a twin engine. Some various other World War I aircraft. The Lusac. Again, a wing structure showing the aileron. Coming up now on a post-World War I interwar year bomber. This was a Martin. This was the MB2. As we come around, you'll see the wing fold mechanism. Twin V12 engines. You see the scale of it and the wing fold mechanism here, the massive pivots. Off to our right is a Ford Model T ambulance used in World War I. And various interwar biplane designs. The Curtiss Hawk, the P6. The Boeing P-12. And the Autogyro. The Autogyro, the main rotor was turned by its forward speed being pulled through the air by the tractor propeller. The top rotor was not powered. You have the Boeing P-Shooter, as well as a plane rescued from the wilds of Alaska from a crash. Up above, the sole remaining B-10 Bolo. This was donated to the museum from Argentina, where they were the last ones to fly them. This was one of the early, considered a heavy bomber in its day. You see the nose turret, very unique nose turret, similar to what was on the B-24 Liberator in World War II. And we get into more of the modern aircraft, the monoplanes. Packard 2500 engine. B-12. Have a dive bomber. You can see the dive brakes, speed brakes on the wings. They're slatted there. That's an A-17. And then coming up, we've got a Hawker Hurricane off in the corner here, as well as a diorama of common accident, nose over. Hawker Hurricane was a vastly underrated aircraft, not nearly as famous as Spitfire, but much easier to produce since it did use a fabric over wood construction as opposed to a stressed metal skin.